Well, just looking at this, it looks like a brand new airplane right out of Seattle or wherever. It never looked this clean, but it sure looks pretty. It's a big hole. Okay, boy, this is some display here. Look at that, there's a patch. That brings a big smile upon my face. My crew and I designed that patch. After we got back in the groove and after the damage and in flight and all that, my crew came to me and said, Ken, you know, we'd like to make a patch up, and we could do that out on the economy there in Thailand. They had guys that were doing that. And I said, that's a great idea. And so they took it on their own. They did the whole thing by themselves and didn't even show it to me beforehand. And got the patches made, and they decided, I think we talked about it, and they said we should be a flight examiner of the missile. So that's what that means. The missile there, SA-2 is the guideline. That's the Soviet missile that exploded off our left wing. But they designed it and bought a bunch for each of our guys in the crew. And so we all put them on, and I still have one. So, so it's April 9th, 1972. I think we briefed around, I don't know, 1 in the morning. 3-ship formation, pretty much standard. I did fly a few 6 ships out of, Southeast Asia, but that was not normal. 3-ship formation, call sign was Aqua. I was Aqua 2. We were briefed. We had already had a couple high threat missions. By the way, I had 23 missions over North Vietnam altogether. We already had a couple of those, so it wasn't new. But this one was a little bit different. They told us how much support we were going to have. ECM below us, B-56s, I think. Fighters above us. We had a fighter escort. We didn't talk to any of these guys, but they were all, they were there. They were listening to everything. So we had an armada, basically. And our target was the SAM sites around Vinh Airfield. Vinh is a city that's on the map in the southern part of North Vietnam. And so we knew it was high threat. We were briefed that it was high threat. We're trying to bomb SAM sites, and we're flying right into, we're a sitting duck. And so the guy that was most concerned was the electronic warfare officer, because he had the jam, he had the jam, the radars. So we got the briefing, and the mission was just normal, the takeoff and climb to altitude, and it was just a normal mission, other than the fact that we were over into Vietnam, and we heard some more chatter on the local frequency that, from the other guys. They weren't talking to us or anything, but so it was pretty much just a regular mission, although we knew it was high threat. And so we got to the IP, and we were getting a lot of uplink radar. Uplink is trying to see where you are. They're searching for you. We did our release, and we always flew, a 3-ship like this, and we used drift angle station keeping, which kept everything lined up. We tried to lay down 3 lines on the ground. This is another thing I just want to share. About a football field in length, roughly, and about a width of a football field. 3 lines of bombs exploding. So anyway, we hit the IP, and we get a lot of uplink, and we hit the we go into the target and make our release. Well, as soon as we made our release, everything lit up as far as the electronic warfare officer. And then we got some lock-ons. We got, almost right away we started seeing missiles. I never really saw any. I was too focused on flying the airplane. My co-pilot did. So the other guys in the flight did. So we started, as soon as we started seeing a missile or two, and then the electronic warfare officer said, evasive maneuvers. And the evasive maneuver was basically a turn to the left and right off our main heading. So we were all in the same heading. And this is where the formation really ends, okay? We're now on our own. So we didn't really have, as I recall, I turned to the left first. I don't know whether we briefed that or not. So I'm number 2, so I turned to the left, 30 degrees off of the heading at 45 degrees of bank. Now that's a steep bank turn in any airplane, okay? 45 degrees of bank. Big old airplane like the B-52, yeah, it's a honking, you know? So 30 degrees off the main heading, climbing and descending 500 feet over the base altitude. So it's kind of a big scissors movement. This is the way I describe it. But climbing, and so this, we're making ourselves pretty hard to hit, see? Up and down, back and forth. So I start out to the left, roll back to the right, 45 degrees of bank, pull it through the main course, heading, over to 30 degrees to the right, okay? And now we're seeing, you know, they've been coming up, and guys are calling them out, and it got pretty scary. We just kept with our evasive maneuvers though. Come back to the left. I'm now climbing. As I come back to the left, I pass the heading, the main heading we were on, 30 degrees over, and I'm climbing up, and I'm like up like this, and I'm about 30 degrees of bank, right? I didn't get to 45, and the missile that got us came up and tried to follow us, and I started my turn back, so the missile was going to miss us, and so it went over the top, okay, like this. Call that the apogee. Goes over the top, and there's a proximity fuse. That's one way that explodes. This proximity fuse went off about 100 feet off the left wing. A lot of miracle stuff here. I'm not kidding. A lot of miracle stuff overall. But so, and when it went off, the wing was like this, and it has a conical spray of shrapnel. It sprayed the entire left side of the airplane. Okay. Now, amazing part was that we were perfectly aligned. If the wing had been down a little bit, or up, this is me talking, up a little bit, no wing, and we would have been trying to bail out. Okay. I think it was perfectly aligned. So it blew off a big chunk of the drop tank, which is here over at the exhibit there. And we didn't know how many holes we had. We didn't have no clue. We had a lot of fuel leaks. After the explosion occurred, of course, you want to hear about that. So I'm hand flying the airplane. Boom! This huge flash, you know, just huge. I will never forget it. And just this shake, you know, this boom. And so my reaction, this wasn't trained either. I mean, it was kind of like, I guess it was trained. I mean, training was wonderful, you know, but my first reaction was not really trained, was, am I still here? Okay, that's a human thing, right? And so, am I still here? I'm flying the airplane, got my hand on the throttles, hand on the yoke. Remember now, I'm 30 degrees of bank like this. I look down at my legs. Yeah, my legs are still here. Okay, I'm not hurt. I'm okay. Okay, and then as soon as I did that, of course, what happened also was the rush from your lungs of the air, because of a rapid decompression, the fog, all the dirt going out the window, out the side, out the holes. And so I just, after that happened, am I still here? Am I flying the airplane? That's the number 2 step. Very, very important. So fly the airplane. That's in the manual in the emergency procedures. The worst thing you could do as a pilot was to forget to fly the airplane. So fly the airplane, and we were flying. And now everything was going nuts though. You know, the fuel gauges were haywire, the engines, we couldn't tell what was working, what wasn't. It was great to have my co-pilot, who had been hit before over there, not damaged and not bailed out, but at least had some experience, you know. And we began to assess the status of the airplane. And the navigator and the radar navigator said, we're soaked with fuel. And so I told him to immediately turn off all the nav equipment, now. So they did. The gunner had a window, could see out of, hole. The electronic warfare officer, you know, he sat downstairs, and he didn't have a window normally, and they leaned forward when they did the jammers and stuff. Well, after we got hit, he leaned back and he said on the intercom, he says, "Well, I have a window now." There was a hole right where his head would have been. Really, it was wild. So here we are now. And I continued the turn, is what I did, because I knew that was where the ocean was. So I always had it in my head, which most pilots did over there. Don't bail out over land, especially in North Vietnam. I mean, you don't want to do that. So I knew I headed for the ocean, because if we had to bail out, we could jump out over the ocean and hopefully survive and get picked up. But the biggest fear for me, amongst a lot of the other guys, was being captured. It was not a fear of getting hit with a missile. It really wasn't. It was the capture part that was even bigger. So, yeah, we headed over towards the ocean, and we were all a mess. We weren't a formation anymore, And so we were talking to each other, and I think the number 3 guy, he didn't contact me right away. We were just overwhelmed with assessing, what's going on? Are we having any fire? Do we have any? And we're now heading south over the ocean. And Terry and I made the decision almost right away. I don't know how we did it. I really don't remember that part. We decided that we had to put it on the ground because there was just no way. It was just any minute. We could have fire. We could have anything. So we decided to go to Da Nang, and we made that decision pretty quickly because there was so many holes, and had the fuel in the crew compartment. On the navigator and radar navigator. And so that decision was made pretty quickly, and as we got a little bit closer to Da Nang, and if you look on the map, you'll see Vinh is not way up in North Vietnam. It's a ways up, but not way up, not up like by Hanoi. Then we said, well, we're gonna go to Da Nang. We've got to put it on the ground. And we didn't know what to expect. These are the kind of thoughts that went through my head. Will the gear go down? Go down. Will we have hydraulic failure? On and on and on. Just a myriad of things. But as we got a little closer, number 3 caught up with us, and he came up behind us, and we're in a descent now. Not a steep descent, but we're already starting down. And it was actually before that we called the Da Nang Tower. So he's behind us, and he told us he was coming. He said, "I'm going to see how it looks for you guys." And I don't know how close he got, but he called before he was close. He could see us. He said, "Well, I'll let you know when I get closer." And I said, "Okay." And we were all doing this on the guard frequency. Everybody in the world could hear you. So he said, the next thing I heard from him was, "Oh, shit." And I said, "What?" He said, "Oh, man, you got fuel leaking out. It's just coming out of everywhere." And I said, "Oh, great." He says, "Well," he said, "I don't know what to tell you." He said, "It doesn't look very good." I said, "Thanks." He says, "I got to go back." He was going back to U-Tapao. So we called Da Nang over guard. Said, Da Nang Tower, this is Aqua 2 for landing." And the tower came back on guard. Aqua 2, you're number 6 emergency in the pattern at Da Nang. It's a true story. Yeah, you can imagine how we're going, what? What the fuck? And so, okay, and then he came back a couple minutes later. Now we're still descending slowly, and he said, "We're going to have to run you out on an extended downwind because of the other emergencies." Basically, he just didn't say that completely, but he said expect extended downwind. And of course, we don't know what's going to work and what's not. That's the other part that was so unnerving. You just didn't know. We're already through it. We're okay, but will the gear come down? Will the flaps come down? Well, the gear came down, the flaps came down. We turned base, and he cleared us to turn final. And we knew we had at least four airplanes still ahead of us. and extended downwind, and now we're in the weather. Okay, we're IFR, can't see the ground. That didn't help really. I mean, although I was okay with it, but got a little bit closer, and the Da Nang Tower came over the air and said, all aircraft on final for Da Nang. Be advised, we now have small arms fire on short final. Can you imagine that, coming through all that? And I hear that and I go, are you kidding me? Yeah. Now there's some guys with guns down there going to be shooting at us as we come across the approach end of the runway? What? It was true. We didn't get hit. We didn't see anything firing, but it was just another thing, you know? So anyway, like I said, we were IFR. We broke out at about 1,800 feet, okay? I'll never forget the sight. I'll never forget it. I'd never been into Da Nang, you know, but I know what a runway looks like. And I also remembered before we got there that the only B-52 that ever went in there went off the end of the runway. That's the only one that ever did. They went in there with an emergency, not with being hit. So that concerned me. And we still had the fuel leaks and, you know, like I say, all the other stuff. And anyway, we break out of the weather and it looks like it's kind of raining, but it's kind of clearing, you know. The runway's wet. It's just a beautiful sight. The beach is out there, you know, the ocean. It was the best thing I could see at that point. I was like, yes. But who knows what was going to happen next, see? So I was a little bit hot on the approach. Not bad, but I was a little bit hot, probably because I was scared. And so we came over the approach end of the runway, and you know, I thought no problem. And a little hot, we touched down, bounced a little bit because we were a little hot. I rarely did that, but just bounced once and back on it. And you know, in the B-52, the aircraft commander in the D model runs the parachute. And you use the chute every landing. This runway was only 10,000 feet. We normally landed on 12,000. So and that was the other one. Is the chute going to work? See, knowing that other one went off the runway. That's what went through my head. Will the chute come out? And the gunner always called the good chute. He told you, you know, good chute, you know. So I popped the chute, good chute. we both, I think, kind of went, oh, I think we made it. And you know, everything was working. The tires weren't blown out, you know, amongst the other things, and the brakes were working. And craziness, though. Typical pilot, because pilots, both of us. Terry says to me, he says, hey, boss, you know, he's got the airport plate out that shows the airport and the taxiways. He says, boss, they only have 50-foot taxiways. I don't know, where we're going to park. This is on the rollout. I said, I don't know. Right after he said that, the deputy commander of operations came over in a car on the ground, on guard. He's got a radio in the car. He's at the end of the runway. He says, because Terry called and said, hey, where do you want us to park? The guy says, just park on the apron and shut that thing down as soon as you get on the apron. He acknowledged it, and that's what we did. So rolled out, got to the end, turned to the left, pulled over. The fire trucks were there. He was there. Off, not right in front of us, but right there, and in his SAF car, and then he came on guard and said, you know, okay, you guys abandon the aircraft. So the fire trucks, there was no foam at that point of time, just water, and they were already spraying, I could see. So I told the crew to abandon the aircraft. It's being a aircraft commander is pretty much like being the captain of a ship, right? So you have to tell the crew to leave. So I said abandon the aircraft, and they all got out. And I know it wasn't a long time, but I took this deep breath, and I kind of, after I told them, and I could see a couple of them coming out on the ramp, and took a deep breath, and I went, wow, I can't believe we're here. I had a moment of silence. I don't think it was very long, but I was the last guy out, which is the way it's supposed to be. So got all our stuff, got my stuff, and they had gotten their stuff, and they were all standing over on the side of the airplane off to a little ways. And I came down the hatch, and this is the airplane right here. And looked across and saw them all looking back at the airplane. And I didn't look back. I just I had my, my stuff and walked on over to where they were, and then I turned around. And it was quite a sight. It literally, it made me think like of taking a leak, peeing, because the airplane was peeing in multiple places. Fuel was just running out. We had shut down one engine, and we had the other one at idle. So we came in with only 6, okay, which we could do. We knew that. But my gosh, the fact that there was no fire, and here's all this fuel still leaking, and they're just really hosing it down, trying to just, dilute it, basically. And so Terry had flown for the triple nickel in the F4 in the back seat, and he knew that they had a squadron there from his old squadron. I don't think he was based there, but there was a triple nickel squadron there. So we told the deputy commander of operations, he did, and he said, can you call the guys at triple nickel and tell them that we'd like to come to their hooch? And they told us that we were going to be there at least all day, so which we were. So we went over there, and we all had a beer on them. So, and the hooches, that's the way they were. They had their own little bar. You didn't have an officers club or anything else. But so we went over there, and we all took deep breaths, and I don't know, it was crazy. It was just crazy. But they said, well, there'll be somebody here probably late afternoon, and there was. Somebody came at 5 o'clock and said, there's a 135 coming in to pick you guys up, take you back to Thailand. So we got back to Thailand, and we didn't do a lot of talking, we didn't do a lot of talking. We just kind of, I think everybody was still processing what just happened, So I got back to my trailer, and in those days they had, aircraft commanders had just a single wide trailer, the bathroom in the middle, and 2 rooms on either end. Okay, so the aircraft commanders got their own room. And so I get back to my trailer, and I'll never forget this either. I mean, I walked in, and that was really another deep breath. It's kind of like, whew, made it. And it was weird because what came over me was, this is bizarre because I might not have been here. And as I got my clothes off and stuff and opened my drawers, there was a dresser in there and got my clean clothes out, and I thought, somebody might have been in here packing this stuff up. That's the thought that ran through my head. So I took a shower and cleaned up and went over and ate at the O Club, and came back, and somebody knocks on the door. I was just got back. Somebody knocks on the door, open up. Captain Curry said, Colonel so-and-so wants to see you in base ops at 7 o'clock, or 1900. And I said, okay. And so I got my uniform. I got my casual uniform back on, not my flight suit. And went over at 1900. And of course, the place was pretty dark because that's the way it was. The operations side, I mean, they still have stuff going on, but not in the headquarters. And the lights were all off, and I went in and found his office, and knocked on the door and said, come in. I walked in and saluted. Said, Captain Curry reporting, sir. And he said, he stood up and he said, Captain Curry, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you made it. He said, sit down for a minute. I want to tell you a few things. I said, great, okay. I noticed he had a red notebook on his desk. And of course, I knew that a red notebook was usually secret or top secret data, and it wasn't open. And he talked with me for a couple minutes and congratulated me and said, well, you're going to get some kind of a decoration for this. He said, I think you should get the Silver Star, but he said, that's not my decision. And I thought, my head, I was going, what? That's not for me. That's way over the top. I'm not that guy, But that's what he said at the time. And it was a few days later when they told me that we were going to get the Distinguished Flying Cross. And I felt good about that. And they gave it to every crew member, all of us, which was fine. It was great because we were all a team, I was all for that. And it actually made me feel better because I really did feel like the Silver Star was just way higher than what I deserved, And I didn't even expect the DFC. It was just, I didn't think about it. So anyway, he opens a notebook. He says, a couple things I want to tell you here. He opens a notebook. I don't remember exactly what he read off, but he said, here's the key thing I want to share with you. And he read this guy's name. He said, I'm going to read this guy's name. It was a Russian name. He said, this guy was in, we think, the SAM site that fired the missile that hit you. He said, you know, they have advisors. And we knew they had advisors. And this guy was in the site. And that's probably why you got hit, you know. And he said, I just wanted you to know that. Daddy closed the notebook and congratulated me again and shook my hand. And I said, thank you, sir. Yeah, so that's a little of the drama and a little of the, almost like in a movie. That's the way I felt at the time. It's kind of, wow, this is really weird, you know. So back to the trailer I went, and I was told that, by him actually, that we wouldn't fly the next day. Got to remember, this was just the evening of the day of. He said, you're going to be off tomorrow. You can tell your crew, no flying. And we'll let you know when you're back on the schedule. Well, we were back on the schedule the following day. And that's the way it should be, you know? That's professionalism. I mean, so we got hit. We got to face some music. That's the way I felt. And I'm a superstitious pilot. And I always said, this airplane saved my life. And I don't take the credit. It's this airplane. This airplane it's emotional for me when I come here because it saved my life. And it's not what I did. It's what my crew did and what this airplane did. And I believe superstitiously that this is a very important part of history because this airplane saved my life. So for whatever happens in the future, I want people to know that I don't take credit for this. This airplane takes the credit, and my other crew members, you know. They were my team, they were my support. It's only with them that I got through that the way I did. So I really want to make that clear. So sure enough, we were back on the schedule, and guess what? We went back on the same mission. This was what was happening in those days, and it was tough. It was tough on all the crews. We went back to the same target, okay? Slightly different IP, slightly different heading, same target. Anyway, all told, I flew 23 over the North Vietnam, the whole 157 missions, 23 were over the North. But we went back to work, you know, and you know, I had no hesitation, you know. So we were told, and this is what really happened, we were told that they were going to try to repair the airplane at Da Nang. The big threat at the time was they were mortaring a lot around Da Nang, and they were afraid they were going to mortar our airplane sitting there because they couldn't hide it, you know. They had to fly in the tow bar and all that and the equipment to pull it back, and they pulled it over by the approach end of the runway. I remember seeing it when we left. And they'd already pulled it over there somehow. They flew a tow bar and the hitch and everything from Utapao. It was close. Okay, so I'm back now flying regular missions, and well, they weren't, none of them were regular. And I've eaten one day, late afternoon, and I decided I'm going to take a walk. And so I'm walking, and I think I was still in my flight suit. I think I'd come back from a mission or something, and I'm just taking a walk for a hike, you know, along the flight line, and guys coming the other direction, and he's in uniform too. And we pass each other, and he salutes me, and I salute him back. And, you know, I've got my name tag and all that stuff, and I hear this voice calling. He says, "Sir, sir." And I said, "Yeah." And I turned around, and he said, "Could I talk to you for a second?" I said, "Sure." And he said, "Are you Captain Curry?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." And he said, "Well, I just wanted to talk to you. I'm glad I saw you." He said, "You know, I work in the ejection seat shop." And he said, "We've been working on your airplane." I said, "Well, I knew that, you know." And he said, I just want you to know that if you had tried to bail out, your ejection seat would not have worked. All of the lines underneath your seat for the ejection seat were hit by shrapnel. They were all broken. Oh, I said, that's pretty interesting. So what ran through my mind right away was the fact that I would have had to make a manual bailout. Okay, the procedure in the B-52 for the pilots and the electronic warfare officer, they had to go downstairs with the chute on their back, which is heavy, down the stairs, you know, kind of bent over because you couldn't stand up there in the front, and then go out one of the hatches where the radar navigator and the navigator had blown out with their ejection seat, which was a downward ejection. Now you got your chute, and now you have to roll out. And I knew, you know, we studied that in the manual all the time. We had to know how to do that. And the big warning there was that you may bounce across the bottom of the airplane when you do a manual bailout through that. Anyway, I was so glad that I didn't have to do that, but it certainly crossed my mind and made me think about, you know, another piece of the whole thing, you know. So if I tried to bail out, nothing would have worked. So now now we've gone home, 28-day break, back again, different co-pilot, but the same rest of the crew. Airplane's in Da Nang, work starts. I get the word that it's flown back, and that's because what that maintenance guy saw me. It's flown back to Utapao, and they're repairing it. And they don't know when it's going to be done. They think maybe August. Well, it turns out, and I'm back over there, both Guam and Thailand, and I find out that the airplane is almost finished. It's now September. Okay, remember, it got hit in April. Now I'm on my second 180 days, and it's there, and it's almost finished. And lo and behold, we walk into the briefing one day, and there's Curry 56-665. And we got to the briefing. I don't know why we got to the briefing a little early. I guess we always did. I don't know. And so the briefing officer comes over to me and he goes, "Can I see you for a minute, Captain Curry?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, Captain Curry says, "Lieutenant Bennett has said he is not going to fly today with you. He was my navigator." I said, "Are you kidding?" And he goes, "No." He said, "I think you should talk to him." I said, "I will, and I appreciate you telling me that." The worst thing would have been for him to stand up in the briefing and say, "I'm not going." So he and I stepped aside, and, you know, and I'm a superstitious pilot. Okay, I don't know why. A lot of pilots are superstitious. It's about the little things, you know. They ferried it out of Da Nang at 10,000 feet with the gear down. I don't think they raised the flaps either. I mean, they patched it up just a little bit and flew it to Utapao.
Just get it like flight worthy with all the.
Well, yeah, no pressurization, 10,000 feet, 400 miles at all it is, you know, or was, to Utapao. So, and it was like flying a prototype, you know, or something. So, and that's how they got it back there.
Did you guys fly missions? Because I know this only did a few missions after.
No, it flew missions, yeah. And I flew it twice. Yeah. That's another good one for you to have this on the record. So what was that like? So my navigator said he wasn't going to go, and then I said, "You are going to go," because she saved our bacon. And she did. So, anyway, we get airborne, and I talked to a few guys that had flown her already, and they told me, "It's pretty weird." I said, "Okay." So sure enough, you know, we get airborne. I didn't really notice anything right away, but on the climb out, you know, it was like flying the way I've always talked about it. You know, I grew up in the 50s and 60s when cars had frames, and it was like driving a car that had a bent frame. And I remember in those days, you know, as a young kid, I mean, you'd get behind a car sometimes that had the frame bent, and they repaired it. The car looked like it was going down the road sideways, you know, because the frame was bent. And that's exactly the way that airplane felt. So you had to use some rudder trim, not a lot, but a little bit, and definitely some aileron trim to keep it straight and level, because it wanted to do its own thing. See, it was tweaked. I don't say it was bent, I don't mean that, but it was just not the same. It had been damaged, you know, and it had to be affected, you know. So it was fine, and I flew it at least twice with my crew, and no problem. other than that.
I wonder if some of the other pilots that flew it too noticed.
They did. They
had a
talked to me about it.
conversation.
Sure,
Okay.
they did. Oh, yeah, they knew which airplane it was. Oh, yeah, they told me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
even when they flew it in here, I don't know who flew it in here, but
Yeah.
yeah, they probably had to do the same.
yeah, yeah. Well, they told me. Yeah, they told me as soon as it was flying again. A couple of the guys had come to me and said, "Hey, I flew 665. Kind of weird, but it's okay. It's not great." But I think what's amazing is to read this history of it's the actual report, and have the graphic of the B-52 here, because there was no way that I knew that this much damage had occurred. We knew we had lost at least one engine, probably two, and we knew that we had lots of fuel leaking. We didn't have any fuel gauges. We had no totalizer. I didn't know how much fuel we had left with the totalizer. It was inoperative. So here we are flying for a good 30 minutes. And that wasn't asked earlier, but we flew. After all of this damage, we were able to stay in the air about 30 minutes, maybe 35, something like that, from the time we got hit till the time we landed at Dayton. And this shot of the drop tank, the back end blown off, that's pretty amazing too. Then over here, I love this shot of the bomb release. And then next to that, of all things, there I am, about to get completely soaked with water after my 100th mission. So it's just emotional. I don't, there's no specific emotion. It's just saved my life. That's what I think about. I was here yesterday too, in the afternoon, and I came over and patted the tire. Said, "Thanks, baby." That's my baby. I know that's silly, but save my bacon. So yeah, it's just emotional, and yet it's thrilling to know that it's here and that there's a story to be told, and I'm proud to be part of that story. I'm just proud to be a guy that served his country, and I'm proud to be part of the Air Force and its history. And I'll always be proud of that, always, because it was a great, great experience for me in every way.
Got it? Got it?
Wake up back there.